Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Oscar Mikey. Today we're going to be talking about the Forever Winter. This is an extraction game that was developed by Fundog Studios, and they released it in early access on Steam on September 24th, 2024. We're almost at the 1 year mark. It's coming up very soon. And I thought this was a good time to revisit the game, play it after all the patches and hotfixes that they've released over the last year, and see how the game is doing. So if you haven't heard of Forever Winter before, this is a post-apocalyptic co-op extraction shooter set in the near future where the entire world's economy has kind of collapsed and now pretty much the entire planet is consumed by endless war. There are three factions that are constantly fighting each other on all of the maps that you'll be playing in this game, and you play as a scavenger or scav, and your role is basically looting and scavenging for gear and resources to survive and build up your stash or your home base. The general gameplay loop, or the way they want you to play this game, is that combat is mostly to be avoided. You're kind of like a low-key stealthy scavenger going into this battlefield, this massive wasteland with all this carnage, and these different factions are just kind of ripping each other to pieces in this battlefield as you're trying to sneak through them. You're kind of a neutral force, and you're just looting whatever you can off of dead bodies and destroyed drones and loot boxes and things of that nature to bring back to your stash. It's a co-op or solo PvE game. There is no PvP. It blends elements from extraction shooters, survival horrors, and a little bit of like tactical strategy. There's a big focus on survival and stealthing your way through the levels to kind of avoid gunplay as much as you can and avoid detection. You are given a pretty big arsenal of weapons that you can modify and customize to your liking, but for the most part, and I'll elaborate on this a little bit later, combat is really punishing and you're far better off trying to avoid it most times. You do have access to quests for all the different factions, and they will give you things to do on all the maps. You can earn XP to level up your characters, and then you can get better, more effective skills. And you can even prestige your characters, and that'll wipe all of the abilities and upgrades that you've given them in favor of higher base stats for you to build off of. The game still has this grim, dark, like near-future atmosphere, and I really like it. I think it really does a good job of like pulling me into the world, and some of the environments look actually really nice. There's multiple playable characters for you to switch between. You can swap between them while you're at home. Your home base is called the Innards. They're all different in some way. There's a couple that are like a little bit more balanced with health and movement speed. There's a couple that are tankier, and there's some that have special abilities, like there's a robot you can play as with a literal gun for a head. All of them have their own XP pools, and you can prestige them all individually. It just depends on how much you play with each one of them. The big currency that you have to worry about in this game is water. You trade in water to travel to certain maps in the game. Some maps require more water than others, and thankfully some of the beginner maps don't require any water for you to spawn in on them. You have a certain amount of water that you can keep in your base, but if you ever run out of water, if you reach 0 units of water, then you risk being raided. These are called water raids, and they're conducted by these guys called water thieves. It's pretty on the nose, but you'll actually be thrust into your hideout, which is a physical space. You can walk around in it and you can see the different modules in it and stuff, and you'll be forced to fight these guys, and if you lose against them, then they'll take all the stuff that you have in your inventory. Luckily, you can pick your combat loadout and your character that you want to go in and fight these guys with before the raid starts. So you want to be very careful when this happens. You want to make sure that you're all squared away with your weapons and ammo, make sure you bring enough, and make sure you win because the stakes are pretty high. Also, if you do manage to come out on top, these guys apparently have some rare weapons that you can loot off of them, so it's kind of like a nice little bonus if you do manage to come out on top. The game does give you a secure box that you can put some items in to keep safe if you get raided, and those will be there when you come back. If you did get raided, they won't be taken away from you. I do feel that this puts a little bit more emphasis on survival in the game rather than combat. And depending on who you are, depending on like what kinds of games that you enjoy, you may see that as a plus or you may see that as a negative. For the kind of gameplay that this game is going for, I think it's a positive. Overall, it really does put a bigger emphasis on survival and looting and just making it out of the raid alive. Before you go into a raid, you can see the different traders and you can get gear, ammo, consumables, meds, grenades, all of that type of stuff. You have a rig or a backpack on your back, and there's several kinds that have different configurations to allow you to carry more or different items. Something I noticed right away when I jump back in the game is there's no warning or pop-up message for missing equipment like meds or ammo. Me being me, I forgot to bring in some spare ammo when I went in on my first raid, so I only had one magazine in my gun, and I ran out right away as soon as I came across the first enemies. If it's possible, I'd like to see a feature like that implemented, because that is in a lot of games now, like Arena Breakout Infinite and Delta Force, if I remember right. The maps load very fast, which is nice. The game is PvE only, which might upset some people. But just because it's PvE, don't make the mistake of thinking that this is like some kind of easy game. The AI is really strong. And there are some characters you can play as that have bigger health pools, like the robot guy. I think he has a huge health pool, but it comes with the downside that you can't heal while you're in raid. You can't use like traditional healing items that a person would to heal yourself, obviously, because you're a freaking robot. But even with that guy who has, God, like 2,500 hit points or something, a squad of AI enemies, if they're all shooting at you at the same time, they can melt you pretty fast. And some of them can respawn kind of rapidly. There's an unarmed zombie, like cyborg robot enemy type that gets dropped into the battlefield from airplanes. And I noticed once like one batch of them had been dropped and been killed by either me or other NPCs, a new airplane would fly in and replenish those almost immediately. The NPCs themselves are kind of inconsistent. Like sometimes they'll be really blind and they won't be able to see you when you're standing pretty much literally right next to them. But then there's other times where like there's a drone floating off way in the distance and it picks me out of all the other NPCs that are like closer to it, battling and making noise. It'll instead see me like from across the map and aggro on me and start shooting at me from across the map. Which honestly, that doesn't feel very good. That kind of sucks. I found that what I like to do is I kind of stayed on the outskirts for a couple of minutes after I spawned in. I let a lot of the enemies fight it out and kill each other, and then once the herd was thinned a little bit, I would then go in, I would loot all the corpses and then get a couple of kills, loot some boxes, which the bigger loot boxes are highlighted with gray squares on your HUD, which is kind of nice. It's a good way to find big boxes with ammo and also water and explosives, some of the bigger items that you need to keep your base going. I found the starting map to be the most challenging actually for me. There's a pretty diverse set of enemies over there. You can see some big, like, mech-type enemies walking around. There's lots of smaller enemies, like human or humanoid enemies running around fighting each other as well. And also lots of drones floating in the sky. There's a map called Ashen Mesa, which I actually really liked. It can be a lot more dangerous than the starting map, but it has so many more resources for you to loot, including water. There's actually tons of water on this map. There's also more ways for you to navigate and maneuver around the NPCs while they're fighting. There's like a little shanty town with elevated catwalks that you can go up to get above the combat. There's big slabs of concrete and destroyed buildings and remains of buildings to take cover behind. And then kind of in the middle of the map, there's a wide open space for the bigger enemies to kind of roam around, walk back and forth, and like kill the smaller enemies. Again, the downside is some of the enemies on this map are like way bigger and way more threatening. There's literal tanks driving around. And there are these huge mech-like enemies with railguns and machine guns fighting each other in the plains. They kind of remind me of Titans from Warhammer 40k or like mech suits from Mech Warrior or something like that. They're huge. Another map that I ended up liking is Elephant Mausoleum. This is basically a huge network of trenches and bunkers, kind of like a battle scene out of World War I Europe. I like this map too because, again, it gives you more options for navigating and maneuverability and going around fights. There's a lot of human AI fighting on the ground and not many larger enemies on this map, which is kind of nice. And the network of trenches is so vast, like it goes off in so many different directions, and there's so many like different nooks where you can duck in for cover and avoid being seen. There's some bunkers as well with big loot boxes in them for you to get some stuff. And it also costs no water to come here and play this map, so this one ended up being one of my favorites in my time playing the game. There are more traders for you to unlock while you're playing the game too. I unlocked an arms dealer type guy that gives you access to weapons and ammo to kind of replace the starter gear, the surplus stuff that you begin with. All the traders have levels to them, and as you level up the traders, they give you access to more better gear. If you do happen to find yourself hurting for gear, don't forget about the donation box. This is kind of one of the only ways players can interact with each other besides squatting up. You can put items in donation boxes and then they'll appear in the stashes of other players. So what are my thoughts on the game overall after a year? I'm not going to lie to you, I think it's still got a long way to go. Player movement is very stiff. I found myself getting caught and hung up on a lot of the items and objects in the world, which was a huge pain because whenever I get aggroed on by the AI enemies, I want to get away from them very quick because they can kill very fast. But then you try to run away from them and I get stuck on like a piece of concrete or a rock or something, and then I just get hosed down. Going back to the AI, again, it was like a little inconsistent, just the way they would aggro on you from across the map sometimes, and then not see you when you were standing right next to them other times. I understand they're trying to go for more of a survival, scavenging, like stealth, avoiding combat type gameplay, but in a game like this, I don't want to be completely avoiding combat all the time. I do want a little bit of action. Maybe if they made the characters a little bit less squishy and you were able to survive for a little bit longer, that would help out with that. I don't know how they might go about doing that. An armor system is just an idea. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think Forever Winter is on the right track, but I think it has a lot more work to do. I think this game is made for a very specific type of gamer. Number one, you have to like extraction shooters. Number two, you have to be okay with a slow burn or slow kind of play style. Number three, this game's made for people who may not enjoy PvP so much, only PvE. Number four, it's probably looking for people who don't mind like a sci-fi atmosphere, maybe like near future, post-apocalyptic. This is not like a modern setting, like a milsim tactical type of atmosphere and setting. And then finally, number five, if you enjoy co-op, if you have some buddies and you're looking for a new extraction game to hop in and play together. And so that's kind of a narrow, very small kind of niche. And if you think you're in that niche, you might enjoy Forever Winter. Although right now I do think it has some technical issues that are holding it back pretty good. It's around $30 on Steam. I'll leave a link to it in the description if you do want to check it out. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like on it for me. It really does help me out. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.